My whole life, Yu-Gi-Oh has been a constant up until about, say, a year ago, probably a couple of years ago, and I'm 23 now. So, and of course, I didn't find out about Yu-Gi-Oh until I was like, it was at like Blockbuster or Hollywood Video, and like I must have been 5 or 6 years old, and just seeing those those Yu-Gi-Oh covers of the DVDs um, that looked so cool with the anime characters like Yugi and Kaiba, and they had like volumes. And being a kid, well, the kid that I was, I would see those and I would just be like, "Oh my god, I need to get that." And then I would rent it and I would try to watch them, but it was like I just couldn't. It was too abstract for me, I think, and too dark. Like it kind of scared me. So I didn't get into Yu-Gi-Oh then, but I knew about it. And then, say a few years later, um, was when I think it was when Yu-Gi-Oh GX was out on Cartoon Network, and that's when I really got into it, and my friends were into it in my neighborhood and in my school. So that's really how I got into it. But it's interesting because like I say how it was a constant throughout my life until about a year ago, and that seems to be the case for quite a few things in my life. Um, where it's almost like I don't know if you've ever played through Pokemon or any video game where you you beat the game, you go through all the parts of the game, you beat it, but then there's in some games like a post game where now you're not playing the game anymore, but in a sense, I mean, you still are, but you're not playing what the main story was, I suppose. And now it's kind of like sandbox mode or free mode. You can do whatever you want. In Pokemon, you can once you beat all the gyms in the Elite Four, you can go fill the Pokédex or trade with other people. Anyway, I feel like I'm in the post game for Yu-Gi-Oh because I don't play anymore. I don't watch the show anymore, but I still have all the memories and I can connect with people about it still. If I, memories or if they're playing, just like catch up on. So it's like I'm in the post game, but I don't play it anymore, or watch it anymore. But I definitely had um, like I compare it to like an STI or an STD where the Yu-Gi-Oh flares up every few months or so, and then I have to play or like buy a pack, but or watch the show, which was normally what I ended up doing because I only ever had one friend, different friends at different periods of time, but one total playing. Like, except when I was very young, all my friends were playing. But like, so I only had one friend that was playing, and then they were on and off. So it was rare that I would be playing at the same time. But yeah, this video is going to be about the spirit of Yu-Gi-Oh. Obviously, I'm not the only one who was into Yu-Gi-Oh. Like happily, like that was so many people's childhood. Um, and some people would have wanted it in their childhood, but like maybe their parents didn't let them because they were maybe devout Christian and that went against their religion or something. But for the most part, I think it was in a lot of people's childhoods, and I think a lot of people connected with it because, and that's that spirit thing I'm talking about. It has a spirit that people resonate with. People want to connect with it, and I'll get more into that further in the video about like why that is and just what exactly the core of Yu-Gi-Oh is. I'll get into that. But first, I think it's a good approach to just kind of break it down into how I felt about the anime and then the card game in person, playing in person. But the anime first, the show, up to so the original show Yu-Gi-Oh, then Yu-Gi-Oh GX, then Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds, and I actually stopped after that, so I didn't watch any of the later ones. And I'm pretty sure it's still going on. But those are the three that I'll talk about. Mostly, I'll talk about um, the first two, especially GX. Those are the ones that I really got into. So the first Yu-Gi-Oh anime, it was I didn't see anything like it at the time. That was its own beautiful Frankenstein creation. I feel like I couldn't get what I was getting in Yu-Gi-Oh from anything else. And it was a deeper calling. It connected with something deep, and it actually has to do with spirituality. Um, if you look at the anime, it seems to have had relation to really big spiritual ideas. So like, and I'm using the word spiritual kind of in the way of like the realms of magic and mythology and spiritual psychology, all that kind of realm of spirituality. So to first start with that, I feel like the Millennium items are worth talking about because you have this world, like if you're looking at the series or the original movie, you have this like Egyptian lore of like pyramids and pharaohs and the Egyptian gods, and it's all so this just crazy world that you're in that connects you to Egyptian mythology, which Egyptian mythology is still alive in spiritual circles today. Like people reference back to like Ra and the pyramids and all that stuff. And they really went into that world. Like they look at the Millennium items. They all had like particular powers, which was cool. That was like an interesting part. And the main character Yugi had the puzzle, the Millennium puzzle around his neck, and it made him special. But no, he was a really cool character. Yeah, I like, and that was the cool. So that was one aspect of the show. But then you had the other aspect where outside of that ancient Egypt stuff, you have like modern day society, city kind of yeah, very city urban, Japanese anime idea of urban. um, but you connect with it if in America because it does feel American. You have Joey, who's Yuki's best friend, and he's like he's just like, come on, like just so I don't know how to say it more. It's just American. Like he's got an ego. He kind of reminds me of a New Yorker. I think that's his accent. I don't know. But and then that's the thing, that's a tightly knit friend group. It actually really reminds me of Northeast American, the bonds people have. For some reason, it's just reminds me of my family in the Northeast. But um, kind of like, yeah, Massachusetts and New York vibes. Anyway, going back to the spiritual aspect, you you have the theme in this show of unity. It's about the friendship, the bonds between the friends. That's what it like comes back to a lot, and that friendship symbolizes more than meets the eye of what friendship is. It's not about friendship, it's about something deeper, but I'll get into that again later in the video when I cover the themes of the entire anime, like all of them as a whole. But then you have this other idea in spirituality that's definitely pulled from, which is the tarot. And tarot, if you don't know what that is, it's cards that are archetypes. So each card represents a different aspect of life, and what tarot readers do is and this is generally, they will like shuffle the deck and then they'll draw a card, and then the card that they see is like that's the universe telling them this is what they needed to see to change to in their life right now. So then, so say it's the Fool, it's like, oh, so, or, and it's based on a question you're asking the deck. You say like, am I doing well in life? And then you see the Fool, and it's like, oh, I guess I'm being a fool in life. That's my explanation, and it's horrible, but it's the gist. And you see that parallel in Yu-Gi-Oh, because it's, I mean, the card deck and you're drawing and you're, but also there's archetypes in Yu-Gi-Oh that all represent different things, and you're also, it's a deck of cards you're connecting with that have characters on them. So like that's all tarot. That comes from tarot, which is like an ancient thing, that I think originated in Egypt. It definitely correlates with that. And then yeah, you also have magic. Magic, a part of spirituality. One part of it, tantra in Hindus in yogic circles. And witchcraft. It can be called. What else? Paganism is also intertwined in that realm, but it's really just and the occult, all that stuff is like magic, and it's really cool how Yu-Gi-Oh dipped into that so hard. Like if you look at the designs and what they were going for, they go into magical concepts um like everyone knows Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl, and then there's whole cards based around those monsters and decks based around them, and then there's an archetype based off of spellcasters, they're called. So like it goes into that world, but it's kind of look, I'm going to compare it to Game of Thrones in a way that it's this fantasy genre. It has like fairies, warriors, like because warriors is history, but with the spin on it of like fantasy. It kind of is like that Game of Thrones thing, but it's this whole world, and that's one, I think. So what I'm talking about, all that world is what pulls people to it. It touches the imagination of us. It comes from the subconscious that we all kind of share, and I'll go into that further later. But yeah, so that's what I'll say about the first anime. Okay, so then Yu-Gi-Oh GX. Um, so Yu-Gi-Oh GX was my favorite uh, thing in Yu-Gi-Oh. Like anything to do with Yu-Gi-Oh, it was Yu-Gi-Oh GX. That was my favorite. That's when I got into Yu-Gi-Oh. I started watching GX first. Um, and then I started getting the cards after I started watching it. So it was kind of confusing, like getting into the card game after that, because I thought like I had some of the rules wrong, because in GX they had to take certain liberties to make it entertaining. So like you play a defense position monster face up, but in the card game you're supposed to play face down, and also other mechanics that just don't make it into the show because it's not entertaining. But this GX show had been my favorite show for the longest time, and I just rewatched it again a few months ago, or like no, more like a year ago, and I I love it every time. I've rewatched the show like at least 7 times. I know I'm crazy, but um, the last time I watched it, it felt like closure, because um, I I was absorbing it all and seeing it from like a post game perspective, like wow, this was my childhood. I see how this affected me this way. This is why I looked up to this character, Jaden, or Aster, or whatever. And last time I watched it, I really enjoyed it, but I know now that that's a closed chapter of my life. Like, if that makes sense. But to talk about what it meant to me growing up, like I remember like I went to an acting school once when I was like 11. I tried it, didn't work. um, but there was one kid there who I was talking to him about Yu-Gi-Oh, and he was super into it. We both were watching the GX show as the new episodes were coming out, and we we like for every skit where we made something up, we just did it Yu-Gi-Oh, and I'm sure it pissed off the teacher because it's like I don't know what they're talking about, like summoning monsters and I draw, like what are they doing? But we had a blast, and that memory just sticks with me because like it's just an example of how these I'm so blessed, and I think our generation is blessed with the internet and TV and all the advances in technology because we live in this interconnected world, and then you can just connect with people you don't know about things that everyone's experiencing. So I mean, TV isn't too recent, but you get the point. So I felt like Duel Academy, the place in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX was just my ideal reality. Like that, like what Hogwarts is for some people, that was for me. Like Duel Academy is a is just this amazing it's an island where everyone duels, and it's like instead of it's school, but instead of boring school, it's Yu-Gi-Oh! So like who wouldn't love that? And then you get to like you get to see when you play the card, you get to see the monsters and see this like dual spirits, which well, like Jaden could see the spirits of the cards. Not everyone could, but when you're dueling, you can see a projection of the card. But like Jaden could connect with the spirits of his card, which is something else, which was also really cool. Um, and that kind of connects to like the idea of imaginary friends. Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, great show. Man, I know Jaden is just like super optimistic, but he has his, he has his flaws. Like he, he always, I like it. So it's like Ash, right? Or like these. So like he always wants to duel. He's always up for a game, and I love that about him. And I also love that he's just such a compassionate person. He's a good friend to like to his friends and any random person. He's unconditionally loving to everyone. Like he'll go out of his way to help people in need. But then you have other characters that all kind of represent different archetypes. Like you have Bastion, who's like the scientist, and it's funny because he like falls in love with this Amazon woman, Tanya, which I love. It's beautiful. It's like it's a juxtaposition when you have like skinny British Bastion like talking about science right next to buff Tanya, like who's an Amazon warrior. It's just so funny, and they love each other. I love it so much. I'm so happy they brought her back with him in the third season. But yeah, so you have him, you have Zane, who's like this hardcore deep guy who's like he's troubled and doesn't want to talk about his problems, but he's also strong, and like he has this big brother vibe, and like he kind of looks after the Dual Academy until like he goes down this really dark path of like a really cool path of like power. The he goes in the direction of he wants the most power, and it shows the ramifications of going down that path through him. Like it eats him alive. Like it eventually, spoiler alert for season 3, it eventually kills him. Um, and man, that death always gets me. It's he's just you can't help but love him. You can't help but love his character. You also understand why he's dying. Like Like, and that this show is bold enough to do that is just amazing. And he goes out doing what he loves, dueling. Although I think he lost his love for it in the pull for power at times. But yeah, his Cyber Dragon deck was awesome. And then you have um, other characters, which I'll go into more of the other ones I like, but you have the energy of this show is like so cool and so different from the original the original Yu-Gi-Oh anime. GX has this very like it's electric guitar music, right? It's like eagle energy. It's like sky blue, like rock music, like soaring, because you have like these beautiful expansive visuals, and like Jaden, he's unbound, like he can go anywhere. He literally goes to space, and he goes to all these like different dimensions throughout the show in different places, and you keep finding on the island, on Duel Academy Island, you keep finding new places like that you couldn't think it existed all just on that island. And then you have like Chaz going to North Academy and that whole realm, and that was awesome. So you just have this world that empowers you. You connect with that energy because it really is like I, I just picture an eagle and this cry of an eagle. It feels like that, and it's just so empowering. So I think, I mean, this is why I rewatch shows, is because I connect with energy of the things I'm watching, and that's a show that really empowers me. And I think, people who liked GX, I think they were connected. They had to be connected to that same thing I was connected to. Just like when they're playing that electric guitar, or that rock music in the duels, it never gets old. It's sick. And then like at the end when Jaden plays the fusion elemental hero monster, and just it's the music is reaching a climax, and then when Jaden wins, he's just a nice guy to the person he beat. Like he doesn't rub it in their face. He's a great role model for all these kids watching him. He was a great role model for me. Um, and yeah, I'll link like the soundtrack in the description. I think some other YouTuber uploaded it. Sorry, I don't remember your name, but it'll be in the description. Another thing I have to mention about the show is the banter between the characters. I mean, the humor in this show, period, just holds up. Even to this age, it still gets me every time. Like the banter they do, especially Chaz. But then even like the all the evil characters, like they have the best put downs. Like, so the banter and the humor is amazing in this show, and I don't see that kind of banter much in other shows. Like the way that like every duel, but it's usually the duels like they say dumb puns, but like the show is acknowledging that they're dumb.
I gotta say, I like your style, bro. First of all, my name's the Chaz. Second of all, what do you know about style? You've got purple hair and you're wrapped in my mom's old living room curtains. Well, guess what? It's time for a makeover. What's that supposed to mean? I'm not sure.
So let's talk about the spiritual aspect of this show. So there's the elements. You have the elemental heroes, which are the Jaden's deck, are elemental heroes, and elemental heroes. Elemental meaning earth, water, fire, air, or wind in Yu-Gi-Oh. And also light and dark, but mainly those four. And those are the classical elements we see in Greek mythology and in Chinese mythology. It's also based on fusion. So now we get into what's called alchemy. And alchemy, once science, is now considered to be more let's say, a pseudoscience, which I wouldn't call it that, but I think that's the general view of alchemy right now. But regardless, alchemy is some of the building blocks of magic or witchcraft. Polymerization, that emphasis on fusing those elements, comes back to that magic thing. But there's something that resonates with us about that. There's something so cool about the merging of those elements into not just like take fire, take water, steam. You have a hero, you have a character who represents those elements, and it's just so cool. And they're not just, yeah, characters, they're heroes. They represent, we all want to be the hero of our own story. And I'm gonna go more into that later, later in this video. The show succeeded partially because of the elemental heroes being that cool, of just the combination of the natural elements, which you see at, people love Avatar: Last Airbender. That's like one of my favorite shows of all time. Pokemon, Avatar: Last Airbender does different bending of the different elements, and then you have Pokemon, which has like 18 different base elements or types, and their different Pokemon are mixtures of those or just embodiments of those, just like the Yu-Gi-Oh cards. The Yu-Gi-Oh cards, like Elemental Hero Burstinatrix, fire, it's fire hero. But then Avion is a wind hero. But then you mix them and you get Flame Wingman. He's so cool. You just get these cool mixtures. Like, I mean, that's kind of what I love about Pokemon too. And I just have to think that the alchemy aspect of these different games and shows has to speak to people on a fundamental level. I really liked Aster. Watching GX as a kid, I always loved Aster the most. Like, I just thought he was I just thought he was like a badass. And I know they tried to make him like an edgy badass kind of guy, but I really looked up to him. I just always I thought he was so cool, and I valued coolness the most as a kid. So I definitely looked up to Aster. He had like coming in, he had the elemental heroes, but he had like the dark version of them, and like Phoenix Enforcer instead of Flame Wingman, and Shining Phoenix Enforcer, which was really cool. But like he was this guy going around town called the Demon or something, and like he would was he looking for a lost card or something? Or like maybe he was looking for plasma or something, but he was like defeating people. I think it was with his Phoenix Enforcer, or yeah, and he was like they would just fall on the ground, and like their cards would be all over the ground or something. It was scary shit. But yeah, so I thought I was so intrigued, and then he was like a cool rival to Jaden, and like they make you dislike the guy at first because like he's working for Sartorius, the evil guy, who literally works with tarot cards. So there you go. I just always thought Aster was cool. He was like this hero character too. Like in the end, ended up just being on Jaden's side throughout season 3. But anyway, just really like that character. I ended up making a Destiny hero deck, like as one of my last decks that I played. Next character I will talk about is Jesse Anderson. Cool character. He to me represents like freedom. Yeah, he's like the embodiment of like freedom, it feels like, because he didn't feel confined by anything. He just kind of did what he did, and it's kind of like Jaden, but he was like, Jesse was solely that, where Jaden had other quirks. And then interestingly enough, he becomes like possessed like later on in I think season 3. And yeah, and because like he sacrificed himself, which was noble as hell. He's like, Jaden, get out of here. Jaden's like, no, and that's like why Jaden became the Dark Emperor or whatever, King, Supreme King. Oh God, I like what he represents. I thought he was a cool character, and his deck, the Crystal Beast, and the Rainbow Dragon, so cool. The last character I would talk about would be, and I'm gonna go back over Jaden just for a second, but Axel Brody, I thought was an amazing character in season 3. He had a great arc. Like, he was just this very serious guy who he was lost. Like, he only knew how to follow orders, and so he seemed like a bad guy in the beginning. Because like when you're a kid watching, like, or at least when I was a kid, it was like good guys and bad guys, and he seemed like one of the bad guys. There were a few of them, like all the newcomers in that show. I didn't trust any of them except Adrian Gecko, who turned out to be like really bad. I think I trusted him and I liked him at first. I remember his flashbacks with his father, and like his father was really, it seemed like, pushed him, but also made him really strong and tough. So like it was his strength, it was Axel's strength and his weakness, but it ended up being his biggest hurdle to overcome was his lack of vulnerability, because toward the end of of that season, he was terrified, and he didn't want to be terrified. He didn't want to be seen terrifying. It was so humiliating for him. And he had to embrace the fact that he does have fear. And then that, I mean, that was just an awesome message and a great character, because then he did, and he ended up helping out the crew. And yeah, I just liked that character. I also liked the Australian guy with Shirley, the alligator. um I forget his name. And then after that, yeah. So Jaden, going back to Jaden, like, what I loved how they put him in this very dark path in season 3. Like, he tore himself up about not saving Jesse, and I could relate to like tearing myself up, because I'm so critical of myself, like, or I used to be all the time, and I would be like toxic to myself. I was not on my, like, I only cared about external success. I didn't care about what it was doing to me internally. And I mean, that's what Jaden is going through. Cause and then, he starts to doubt himself and only listen to that voice, and he ignores his friends in the process, and his friends add to that negativity then, because he's not being receptive to them and they're trying to help him. So then he makes it worse for himself and turns them against him. Um, and then he just ends up being the Supreme King, which is the embodiment of ego. Like, it's such a good, that this show is such a good, like, spiritual metaphor, because like that's what the ego would want. It wants you to be the king. And why is the Supreme King evil? Because it's all about power and domination, and it's not about love and life. So, that became such a problem that it could have only ended one of two ways. It could have ended in the Jaden being gone forever, the lost in that dark world they kept showing him in, like inside of his own brain, or he goes through this catabasis, I think it's called, or like this, basically through the belly of the whale, and comes out like the hero's journey, like evolved, transcended. And that's, so now I can get now to um, kind of overarching themes of the Yu-Gi-Oh anime, how it's about, it's really about the hero's journey, as a lot of these anime are, but it does it so well. And um, you look at like Carl Jung's work with the archetypes, and how and the collective unconscious, how subconsciously we are connected to these basic archetypal ideas. All humanity is. And when, as an artist, you tap into that, and it comes out. And so in these completely separate cultures all around the world that grew separately, they have the same archetypes that they're symbolized in their religions, in their practices, in their artworks. Joseph Campbell did this work, like kind of looking at every culture and seeing the similarities, similar stories. And that, like, so you look at the Yu-Gi-Oh show, and they were pulling it from those very human archetypes. That spirituality is going into the depths of what it means to be human and taking something out. That's what an artist does. An artist goes in that world and puts it on paper. A writer does that. A writer goes in that world and puts it into words, creates a story. So a musician, that's an artist. The list goes on. But Yu-Gi-Oh, having music, images, and writing, encapsulates it, but really well. So some shows miss the mark and go for more trivial ideas, and some people like that. But Yu-Gi-Oh is a very spiritual show. Spirituality is subjective. It's spiritual to me. It means a lot to me. After that, you have Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, which was a great show for the most part. I think I dropped off before it ended. It wasn't as entertaining to me as GX was, but not many shows have been. But I like Yusei. He's a noble guy, compassionate, good protagonist, stoic. You definitely look up to him too, and he's just a cool guy. And then you're in this world which also has been an archetype in the subconscious that many artists over the years and writers have pulled out of, which is this Neo city, this Neo Tokyo, cyberpunk city in the future. It's not in the future, but it looks like it's in the future, and it might be in the future. I don't even know, actually. But they have these dual runners, which are like motorcycles, but motorcycles on steroids, and they go super fast, and they have to do that to duel. So the duels are sick, and it's just a cool show. And I really like Stardust Dragon. Stardust Dragon, something about it. If you've ever had that card and you look at it, there's something about it that you're connecting with. I don't know what that is, but I'm going to try to dig into that idea of what is it that when you're holding a card, what is it that you're connecting to, and why is it special? Why is it powerful? I'm going to try to dig into that later in this video. So yeah, those are the Yu-Gi-Oh shows that I watched, and as you can tell, they had a great impact on me. So and I guess just real quick, because I missed it, for 5Ds, I liked Crow's character. I liked his deck too, the Black Wings, but he was a good friend to Yusei. Again, friendship being a theme in this show. And I liked Akiza too. She was a cool, conflicted character. I want to talk about friendship because that seemed to be the theme throughout these shows. And you really see it in the original anime and also GX. But you even see these cards, they came out with Unity and Handshake or something, Yu-Gi-Oh! Friendship. There's these cards that even came out that were about that, and it was the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime characters, the original ones, together. And I really think that's what Yu-Gi-Oh! Represents, is friendship. But then you ask, well, what does friendship mean? What's so special about friendship? And it's definitely not what it seems. I think when people hear friendship, me included, you initially think oh, friendship, two people with the labels of being friends who can interact in life and share things in life that you don't with just any person that you see. It's someone you have a special connection with. But on a deeper level, what does it represent? When in these shows you see the biggest moments are when it's these people fighting for each other or putting their lives on the line to save their friends or whatever. Those are the most powerfully affecting things. Why does that speak to us the most? That's because friendship is about unity or love. It's really about love, and love is integral to us as humans. Like, we come from love. That's our essence. And so yeah, like, this show is really gravitating around the idea of love, and how I think that's why the writers or artists of this show and of and the creators of Yu-Gi-Oh really were connecting to a deeper spiritual truth, because that's the themes they were putting out there for us. And you're watching that as a kid, and you care so much about these characters, and you see what they're going through. You go through that with them, and you experience that love, and then you want to share that with others. And it's like butterfly effect. It's like infectious positivity. And I just think that the spirit of Yu-Gi-Oh is togetherness or unity or love of yeah, because like, what is love? Love is taking one as yourself. It's oneness. It's like not seeing the difference between you and that person, but seeing, them as yourself, and acting in that, from that truth. So I think this show really does that well, and I'm glad that I was able to grow up with it. But yeah, then so next I'll talk about the card game, and this one's not going to be as long. I know I've been going for so long. Card game, a big part of Yu-Gi-Oh. Yeah, so that started for me when I was in elementary school. And I was watching the show, but didn't have the cards. But then my friends had the cards, so I had to get the cards. And when I opened my first pack, it was like an amazing experience. Just like, whoa, what are these? Like, these are mine now. I have these, and these crazy looking cards, like, they're mine. I remember like Monster Reborn, just seeing it and like, what is this thing? But yeah, and it's like, it was kind of my drive for it was kind of like, I want to have the rare cards, like, and the deck of like the rare cards. Or, I don't know. I think that was my drive, was like, I have the special cards. Oh, I got the special ones. I'm special. As a kid, I guess that was my mentality. But yeah, so I got a pack at like the store. My mom got me a pack, and it was awesome. And then that led to an addiction of just every time at the store asking for the cards. And then when my mom saw that it was starting to be a problem, and she's like, hey, we shouldn't be getting this, tantrum. It was bad, but good lesson for me. And then, so yeah, I had like a set amount of cards, and then I kind of stopped getting them because I wasn't allowed after that, after getting so many. And to be fair, she spent a lot of money in those months that she got me them. But then I would just look through my cards all day, like whenever I had time. It was so fun. I loved just looking through those cards. Like, there was this other world, and they were like my friends almost. Like, just having, like, putting a deck together, even, because that's what the show shows you to do, and then you kind of have a camaraderie with your cards. So I was doing that, and I of course took after Jaden and had the elemental heroes. So I just loved those elemental heroes. Like, they were so cool. They're still like mind-blowingly awesome. My favorite card of all cards, one of my favorite characters in anything is Elemental Hero Neos. That is just to me this like this avatar of mystic power. It's just so cool. He reminds me of like Shiva. Um, so I love it, and the fusions are sick. Flame Wingman, Shining Flare Wingman, they're all so cool. So yeah, looking through those cards was made me so happy. But like I never got the expensive. I rarely got like the expensive pulls from the packs, and I didn't buy the singles because they were expensive. Like the expensive singles of like Elemental Your Flamewing Man and Rainbow Neos. Like I wanted those so bad, but it was always like I couldn't. My parents put their foot down about, hey, you can't get things online, first of all, and second of all, if you do, it better not be like, if you're gonna get anything, it can't be more than a couple bucks. So I had to be very, like, I was always dreaming to have a lot of those cards, and didn't have them, but to see them in the anime was awesome. And then I eventually got them when I got a job, of like at age 14 or something. But going to the card store when I got older and when I was able to get my own cards and stuff was its own experience of like, I could see these people who kind of seemed socially estranged all coming there to the card store and connecting and like, hey, you want to trade or you want to duel? And like that was where they had a home, and that was just amazing to see. Like these people coming together through Yu-Gi-Oh! Like I'm telling you, these things like Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon are gifts from the heavens. Like they're gifts that we're so lucky to have, and thanks to things like the internet and technology improvements and global communication, we can connect through those things. So that's awesome. It's awesome to be alive in this generation. Really, what Yu-Gi-Oh was for me was an escape from reality at the end of the day, but that was my reality. And I lived in fictional worlds that I used to absorb as a kid, and that actually helped me through life. What it meant though was that I wanted to hide from the the world at times, so I would hide in these realities, in these fictional realities, and I don't regret it. I've formed bonds with like energies of like I was talking about the Yu-Gi-Oh GX, the vibe of the show of like that confident spirit, like eagle energy. That I was such an infectiously positive person at time, like quite often in school and stuff because of that. Like I absorbed that, and then not only that, but I was able to connect with so many people because of it. So like I don't regret like that escapism. In fact, I don't think it's escapism. I think it's going inward, just in a different way. I'd be very interested to see anyone else who like in the comments, you, if what your experience with Yu-Gi-Oh has been, or even it doesn't have to be Yu-Gi-Oh, anything that you felt you connected with in a similar way, or just talk. I'm down for conversation, and yeah, thanks for watching.